Hey everybody, my name is Elijah Anderson and welcome to my first video review. Now this is going to be the first in a series of reviews where I talk about movies that I've just seen and what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, and then in the end I'll rate them on a scale from 1 to 5. Now before I jump into anything, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am an incoming freshman at college and I hope to be a screenwriter and director and go off into Hollywood and make my own movies someday. And I thought this little video series might be a good chance for me to talk about what I like about movies and the certain kind of films that I like and so on and so forth. Now keep in mind that these reviews will not be like a lot of others where they come out right after a big huge movie has just come out or even a week after a big huge movie has just come out, because I don't have the financial means to go to the movies every week to see a movie that has just come out. But the good thing is that these reviews will be about movies that have come out in the past few months. So without any further ado, let's jump into the first review. So as you could probably tell by those clips, my first movie I'm reviewing is Godzilla, and before I go into the review, I'm just going to give a little summary of what the movie's about without giving anything away, so there's not going to be any spoilers in here or anything like that. So the plot basically revolves around 15 years after a nuclear meltdown in Japan, which has reawakened these two creatures known as mutos, which are basically these huge mutated insects, and basically go around, the country, ravaging the countryside. And it also reawakened an ancient predator known as Godzilla. And that's basically all I can really say without giving too much away. The film also stars Aaron Taylor Johnson as a U.S. explosive ordnance disposal expert, and it stars Elizabeth Olsen as his wife and Bryan Cranston as his estranged father. Also joining the cast are David Strathairn, Ken Watanabe, and a host of others. Now let's get to what's good about this movie, because there is a lot of good stuff about this movie. Well, the first number one thing is the design of Godzilla himself. And I'm just glad that they went back to the original design. Again, I always think back to that, awful 90s Godzilla by the guy who did 2012 and Independence Day. He didn't even look like Godzilla. He just looked like this big, huge dinosaur, mutated iguana sort of deal, and I never really understood that. So I'm glad that this movie, they went back to the design of the original Japanese Godzilla. And not only is Godzilla good, but the human drama is actually surprisingly well written in this movie. The relationship between Bryan Cranston and his son Aaron Taylor Johnson is good. The relationship between Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen as his wife is good. And the actors all do a really good job. Ken Watanabe plays a good scientist. Sally Hawkins plays a good scientist also. And all the rest just do a really great job. And also, something about the writing, the suspense of this movie is what is really impressive. Usually, nowadays, when you think of a Godzilla movie, you'd think that the filmmakers would just film it as this big, huge, in-your-face action movie that has you, hits you with the action right from the beginning. But they don't necessarily do that. What they do is sort of similar to what they do in Jaws, where they don't show you the monster right from the get-go. They might show you little snippets of it or anything, but they just talk about this monster and they just build him up, and that is enough to keep you on the edge of your seat with the suspense. And the suspense in this movie is really good. And what helps the suspense is the music, which is another good thing about this movie. Another thing that they usually do today, especially in monster movies, and something I've been seeing in movies like Transformers and Man of Steel, is that they use these big, bombastic musical sounds with dubstep and rock guitars. And while I think that sounds cool, it gets a little in your face, but the music in this is surprisingly subdued. I mean, it's in there. It's not totally absent, but it's just sort of, your normal orchestral score and is nothing too big or nothing too fancy, and it doesn't have those doomsday horns, the ones that go blam, when something big or bad happens, and it's just written to help the story. The musical score was written by Alexandre Desplat, who also wrote the music to Rise of the Guardians and some of the Harry Potter movies and Argo and so on and so forth, and he just does a really good job. Now, I do have two gripes about this movie. One is, while I do like that they do take time to build Godzilla up, for me, they just took a little too much time, and it really dragged before Godzilla actually got in there. I actually remember, falling asleep before Godzilla actually shows up, and it can actually bore you too, because I remember it almost being an hour before Godzilla actually showed up. And the other thing is that Godzilla himself isn't in it for very long. I mean, right after that first scene where Godzilla rocks in, gives this big roar, and that noise that comes after the roar, it just cuts back to, footage on the news of the aftermath of him showing up. But all those gripes are made up for in the film's climax, which I think is worth the price of admission. Again, without giving away too much, Godzilla does something in this movie that is just cool. It will just totally blow you away. I remember watching this with my friend who actually had no interest in seeing this Godzilla movie, and after that one scene, this sold the movie for him. Like, it is just really cool, and it's really awesome, and it goes back to the epicness that is basically Godzilla and has been since ever since his first Japanese movie. So all in all, I think Godzilla is a good movie. On the rating scale, I'd rate it at 3 out of 5 because, again, the fact that Godzilla is not in it for very long, and the fact that the parts before he comes in do really drag, do kind of get in the way of the movie, but they don't totally destroy the movie, they just kind of slow it down. So Godzilla, all I can say about it, it's a good movie. Not one of the big monster classics, but it's a good movie, and I hear they're coming out with a sequel soon. No, I just hear rumors about it. The director said he'll get involved, but he was just concerned about making this one. But still, it's a really good movie, but you don't have to take my word for it. Check it out and see for yourself. Take care, everybody. My name is Elijah Anderson.